by famine between mid-March and May, and more than 70% of...
Directly after, one solo advanced paramedic was the first and only paramedic to be on scene for a long time. Before he turned up on scene, the British Transport Police, armed police, had moved into the city room, cleared it with weapons, and formed what they colloquially call a spiky bubble. It's a temporary safe space in which health workers and rescue workers can have a temporary safe time to deal with patients in the midst of a dangerous environment. Spiky bubble because it's surrounded by weapons built to defend the health workers. When we have an explosion or a building collapse or a fire in London or in anywhere in UK, paramedics have what we call a hazardous area response team, who are specially trained to rescue people from hazardous areas such as fires, building collapses, explosions. They have special equipment, special training and special body armour. We also have a tactical response unit in the UK. They have body armour, helmet, ballistic training, and they're built to go into a dangerous environment, make it safe and rescue people with special training. If any paramedic has to attend a shooting in London or a stabbing, no paramedic responds alone. We have a helicopter air ambulance that turns up. We have several ambulances that turn up. We have armed police. We have fire brigade. We are never alone. Paramedics in Gaza don't have any spiky bubble. They don't have any hazardous area response team. They have no armed police to defend them. They have no special training. All they have is their Volkswagen minibus, their own brains and their paramedic bags. I'm going to tell you about a few paramedics that I know by name that have been killed in Palestine. The list, I'm sure, is bigger, but these are the ones I know about. We have Yusuf Zaino and Ahmed Al-Madoun. Their ambulance was struck by a direct tank shell hit in Gaza while responding to a mass shooting of a family. This was the family of Hind Al-Rajab, a 6-year-old girl who was a sole survivor of a shooting in which her entire family died in the car. She could be heard on an ambulance call, screaming and crying, until she is also eventually extinguished by a hail of bullets. Yusuf Zaino and Ahmed Al-Madoun were responding to this call after getting the go-ahead from Israeli forces that it was now safe to enter. Their ambulance was then struck by a direct hit from a tank shell. They both died. 4 ambulance workers, Yusuf Abu Muammar, Fadi Fuad Al-Mani, Islam Abu Riyala, Fuad Abu Khamash, were all killed in their ambulance along with their patient while they were on their way to hospital by a direct Israeli airstrike. CNN and the Journal of Emergency Medicine report of one unnamed paramedic who was shot in the back by a sniper while placing a dead body into a body bag. Now it's important for us to relay these stories today and remember them and to show them that they have some support and they have people who are with them, because if I were in that scenario and I were looking at the news and I was looking at what people like Rishi Sunak are saying about these attacks, I would feel very alone. So it's important for us to show the support and also to get our leadership and our trust to show some kind of statement of support for these paramedics and show some kind of condemnation for the purposeful targeting of health workers, especially paramedics, while responding to patients. And I have this message now to any paramedic in Gaza or a first responder who's working in a war zone and who's been targeted and deliberately killed. No matter what our government or the news says, or no matter what silence you hear from our leadership, just know that we are with you. Us nurses, us doctors, paramedics, nurses, ODPs, OTs, physios, all other allied health workers who are actually working and saving lives. We are with you, and we will always be with you in spirit, and we are trying to get to you in person. Just know that health workers around the world are with you, first responders, and long may you continue to respond. And one message for those who have been killed in the line of duty. I have a message to you from the Quran. Do not say of those who are killed in the way of God that they are dead. No, they are living, they are with their Lord, and they are well provided for. Thank you.
He always loved physiotherapy and always wanted to be a physiotherapist. He was driven by helping people, and he was one of the most generous people you could ever meet. He was always very active and equally as loud. You always knew when he was in the room. He had a larger-than-life personality, which meant those around him had a lot of fun as well. And I always joke with people that know him and me in my work, he loved the British chocolate, and that's one of the reasons he loved our visits so much. Some of the happiest memories his best friends have of him is from university, when they were working on graduation projects together. There was a team of 4 of them, and sadly 3 of them have now been killed, and one remaining friend is alive, called Basman. Uda was working as a specialist musculoskeletal physiotherapist at Al-Shifa, and he was also a sports physio in the Jabahala refugee camp, where he worked voluntarily. He was ambitious and in the first year of his master's degree. He was shortlisted to receive a MAP scholarship to study MSK physiotherapy in Egypt. As he was passionate about clinical academia and being the best clinical educator he could be. But his final love was soccer. He was a huge fan and his favourite team was Real Madrid. This would be the first question he would ask any of the UK physiotherapists that went out, and he would talk to you for hours. Uda was killed in Gaza on the 3rd of January 2024. We will never forget him. It is for this very reason we cannot be silent. As rehabilitation experts, we must always be on the side of humanity and against the side of oppression. We are here today collectively, calling on our profession and peers to stand up and advocate for our colleagues in Gaza and Palestine who need our support, and we need to be their voice when they don't have one. We call personally on the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy Council members to reconsider their silence and refusal to join the other healthcare organisations and trade unions in calling for a ceasefire. It is not too late to be on the right side of humanitarian history. Thank you very much.
My name is Tabby. I'm a clinical research scientist. I am acutely aware it is a very diverse role, so I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and how this impacts the healthcare system in Gaza. So I'm here, along with the rest of you, to mourn the loss of my fellow colleagues and protest against the UK's continued funding and arms trade with Israel. I'm not sure if you're aware of what role clinical scientists play in healthcare, but they are a very diverse category depending on the speciality. So in a nutshell, they research the development of techniques, drugs or equipment to help prevent, diagnose and treat illnesses. But clinical scientists are also healthcare and medical experts who support clinical staff like doctors, scientists, physiotherapists in their work with patients. Their work ranges from testing lab samples, which ultimately help diagnose patients, or, like me, work on drug and vaccine development. Scientists perform research that help inspire new medical practices, procedures, or help physicians and medical professionals. So you see, they play a quiet but integral role in the healthcare system. They are the pioneers of health innovation and help contribute to breakthrough treatments for the population. And eliminating these academics is an attempt to suppress the economic growth and limit health provisions and technologies available for future generations. But it also destroys the foundations of the healthcare system. And we need scientists to run the lab and conduct these diagnostic tests. We're forced to gather here today in protest and solidarity because our fellow healthcare workers, patients, children, babies, and civilians are being indiscriminately butchered and targeted by the Israeli war machine. Sufyan Tayyeh was a scientist. He was the president of the Islamic University of Gaza. He was leading researcher in physics and applied mathematics. He was killed along with many of his family members in the Israeli airstrike on Gaza on the 2nd of December. He won the Palestine Islamic Bank Award for scientific research for the years 2019 and 2020, just a few of the many awards that he had accumulated over his academic career. But now the world will never see what innovation he would have developed to save lives. Scientists like Sufyan elevate the economy and take health innovations to global markets where they make collaborations in healthcare and pharmaceuticals worldwide. They make Palestine visible on the global health industry. They make Palestine recognized as a civilization with a lot to contribute to the world. The Palestinians are an educated people with literacy rates over 96%, one of the world's highest rates. But the war on Gaza has devastated education and the health sector, where clinical scientists play a vital role. Sufyan is just one of the 600 plus healthcare workers strategically targeted by the Israeli war machine. They use the decimation of healthcare as a strategy of genocide, along with educide, ecocide, and man-made famine. We are now 7 months into this horrific Holocaust. More than 40,000 dead, 23,000 plus being babies and children, 36 hospitals flattened to the ground. Yet the UK government is still using our hard-earned taxes to fund this genocidal Holocaust. We do not want our hard-earned taxes to be spent on bullets pumped in babies and bombs dropped on hospitals. We all saw the destruction of Al-Shifa Medical Complex and heard the horror stories that emerged. We saw doctors executed in front of their patients. Their only crime, refusing to leave their bedside, died trying to save these patients' lives. No, they didn't die, they were murdered. We saw the Israeli war machine herd these medics, these doctors, nurses, physios, pharmacists, scientists, blinded like animals, like cattle, zip-tied and packed into the back of a pickup truck, only for us to later learn that they were executed like lambs to the slaughter. Healthcare workers are humanitarians, and the Israeli war machine has made it an executable offense to be a humanitarian. We don't just see this with healthcare workers, but we saw this in the recent murder of 3 British aid workers and the humanitarians, the kitchen aid workers. As healthcare workers, we are all humanitarian, and we live every day working for the preservation of human life. We cannot sit silently while these heinous atrocities are being committed. We have a duty to fight for health justice for all. According to international law, Article 18 of the 4th Geneva Convention, bombing hospitals and schools are a war crime, second in heinous severity to genocide. And Israel is committing both. Over 80% of the British public want the UK government to stop arming Israel, to stop spending our hard-earned taxes funding the Israeli war machine. Our money should be spent, invested in the crippling public services like the NHS, housing, or social services. Not a war we have no business being in, not murdering healthcare workers, not bombing hospitals, not pumping bullets in babies, but we are represented by an unelected, greedy politicians, where 40,000 dead is a small price to pay for their ulterior motives. Shame! Well, let's not forget it's election year, and we won't be silent. We will keep taking to the streets week after week, day after day, until our demands are met. We want boycotts, we want actions, arms embargo, criminal sanctions. We want boycotts, we want action. I'm going to hand you over to Emily.
Now, much like my parents, and say that I'm not a doctor. I'm actually a member of Na'amod. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of the organisation. We're a group of Jews in the UK who are seeking to end our community's support for occupation and apartheid. And in absence of having anything properly prepared, I'm going to read an abridged version of an article that got published in British Vogue last week. So if any fashionistas out there, it's nice to know that Vogue is in fact on our side, that the tide is in fact turning. I want to touch a bit on the idea of hate marches, which seems to be something that has been thrown around a lot recently. There's a perception of these marches which frequently see health workers, teachers, parents and children taking part as violent hate mobs baying for Jewish blood. Robin Simcox, the government's Commissioner for Countering Extremism, publicly claimed London had become a no-go zone for Jewish people as a result of the now regular pro-Palestine demonstrations. Yet, here I am. While former Home Secretary Suella Braverman invoked the very real rise in anti-Semitism, was simultaneously fueling surging Islamophobia in Britain in an attempt to curb all of our rights to protest. Yes, there are people in our society who harbour genuinely violent anti-Semitic views, and I'm going to add that many of them are far-right ethno-nationalists who applaud the actions of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But I personally have not encountered a single one on any of the marches. In fact, the Jewish bloc is treated with a strange sense of reverence, and I regularly see people thank us, often through tears, for marching alongside them. At the protest on the 9th of March, we were met with a sort of applause typically reserved for main stage festival acts, and within the bloc itself I have watched as new cross-group and intergenerational friendships have formed. And this, of course, flies in the face of those who would seek to categorise us as self-hating un-Jews. The sadly familiar and frequent attempt to belittle our position and our actions in solidarity with Palestinians. And upsettingly, many of these people wantonly compare members of our bloc, a large number of who are the direct descendants of Holocaust victims and survivors, to capos. If you don't know what a capo is, a capo was a Jewish inmate in a concentration camp who was appointed by SS members to oversee and often kill their fellow prisoners. It is the worst thing one Jewish person can call another. But I don't stand, and we don't stand in solidarity with Palestinians in spite of our heritage and our belief. It's because of our shared history of persecution and dispossession and genocide that we object to those who would use our identity to aid and abet slaughter. Many of us within the movement are new to protest. People who have been moved to use their voices to decry this genocide, even as some of them mourn loved ones who were killed on the 7th of October. These are the people I'm most in awe of in our bloc, those who have taken the first step to call for an immediate ceasefire, a hostage deal, aimed not only at those held hostage in Gaza, but also to the thousands of Palestinians held in arbitrary detention, many of them children, many of them victims of torture, and an end to the siege on Gaza, which has lasted 17 years. They stand on the shoulders, we, all of us here, stand on the shoulders of Marek Edelman, the leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, who said that to be a Jew means always being with the oppressed and never with the oppressors, whoever they may be. There is a quiet reckoning taking place in the living rooms across this country, as many of us are forced to confront for the first time the British state's complicity in the historic and ongoing dispossession of the Palestinian people. Passover, the Jewish holiday which celebrates the story of the Exodus and starts on Sunday night, often sees us drawing comparisons between this ancient story of oppression and modern suffering. We're instructed to see ourselves as though we were the generation that was liberated from Mitzrayim, which is the Hebrew name for Egypt, but literally translates as the narrow place. And as my eyes turn to Gaza, I cannot think of a narrower place. Not just in scale, the Gaza Strip is 5 miles wide by 25 miles long, but in the physical and emotional constriction of her people, who are now witnessing the culmination of a 76-year-long campaign of violence, a second Nakba, and nor can I stay silent when my own family experienced dispossession. Sorry, I told myself I wasn't going to cry, and I always cry at these events. Ethno-nationalism and slaughter within my own lifetime. My mother was born in a village by the Drina River in Bosnia, and I myself was born in the middle of a series of wars which saw her motherland torn limb from limb. Night after night, people tuned into scenes of abject devastation on the news. Our libraries were reduced to ashes. Our doctors were executed. We witnessed scenes of human blood being sluiced over marketplaces when people were desperate to receive basic aid from the UN. They watched as now convicted war criminals talked of safe zones and only targeting combatants as they herded innocent men and boys, 18 of the members of my own family, into slaughterhouses in Srebrenica. Their suffering was reduced to 10-minute segments on BBC News for the British public to consume nightly. And now I watch, as my mother watched, as we all watch, another war through another screen. We watch as the libraries of Gaza are burned. We watch as health workers are executed, as doctors are abducted, as desperate people are killed scrambling for the meagre rations the UN provides. And it leaves me furious, and it should leave you furious too. Freedom is a heavy load. It is one that we should all choose to bear.
You know, don't be afraid to continue to speak up for justice, and don't be afraid to keep speaking up for humanity, and don't be afraid to keep showing your compassion. You are not on the wrong side, and this isn't complicated. What we are witnessing and what is unfolding in front of our very eyes is horrific. And I want to end with this. You are also all experiencing what is called secondary traumatization. By continuing to watch the images that we're watching, we are also all being traumatized. I want you to make sure that you are taking care of yourselves, you are finding a safe space, you are speaking to your colleagues, and you are sharing what you are feeling and what you are going through. You are not alone when you are witnessing this. Whether you're sitting on Instagram and seeing these images unfold in front of your very eyes, or Twitter, or on the news, or receiving WhatsApp messages from your health worker colleagues, or even from your family. Keep using your voice for the voiceless. They need it a lot. Just like this gentleman over here said, you know, if I was a healthcare worker or if I was a Palestinian, I would want someone to be speaking up for me. I want to thank you all for coming. If you want to find out about more of the events that we hold, you can find out information from Allied Health Professionals, the number 4, Humanity, on social media, and also from Health Workers, the number 4, Palestine, and also Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We don't know when the next London Vigil will be here at Downing Street, but we'll be sharing it on the social media. Thank you all very much for your time.